So you can go check us out there. So let me quickly also say hello to Carmen. Carmen, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, Marco. Good afternoon, listeners. How's things going?
Hopefully, in terms of this particular segment. Apologies for that.
Are you
It just
good?
seems like my feed is delayed.
Okay. Yeah, your internet seems to be a bit slow there. Are you load shedding? Oh,
I think I'm load shedding, but normally it is good. I don't know what's
mm.
happening now, but uh, common, but unraveling tenant cost and the responsibilities.
Yes, so today we're speaking about unraveling tenant costs and responsibilities. We're just carrying on with our segment. We started on leasing 2 weeks ago, and last week we spoke about landlord responsibilities and costs. So today we are looking at tenant cost and responsibilities. And one of the key things that I would like to look at today is the key responsibilities that tenants should be aware of when it comes to maintaining the property and how this impacts your overall rental experience. Right? I'm not sure where Marco is at the moment. So while Marco's just handling those technical challenges there in the background, okay, Marco, I see you back. I've just informed the listeners that we're looking at the key responsibilities tenants should be aware of when it comes to maintaining the property and how this affects their overall rental experience. So I'm going to go straight back into that while you're just sorting out your technicalities there. So, when we look at key responsibilities around maintenance, it starts right at the very beginning of the lease period. And firstly, make sure that when attending to the signature of the lease agreement, that you are making sure that you are reading what your maintenance responsibilities are while residing at the property. It's usually specified in the lease agreement what your maintenance responsibilities are, as well as your other obligations. Important factors to remember when dealing with maintenance in the property is number one, checking the lease. What is your responsibility? What is the landlord responsibility according to the lease agreement? And then also making sure that you are present, engaged, and making your own notes at the move in inspection, the joint move in inspection between you and the landlord or you and the landlord's appointed agent. This moving inspection will protect you and also make sure that you are covered through the lease period. And then another important thing would be is to make sure that if you identify something in the property that requires repair or requires maintenance, that you report it to the landlord or the agent once it comes to your attention. So often you may report it, and we would let the tenant know that yes, we will send out a contractor, they will assess the situation, but if it falls in a certain element, such as wear and tear, it would be your responsibility. Or if it's negligence due to acts of you living in the property, then it would be your responsibility. Or if, according to the lease agreement, for instance, it's an exterior or structural issue, then it would be for the landlord's responsibility. So always report maintenance and repair issues as soon as it comes to your attention. Don't let the situation get worse than it is. And then also, we normally send out a contractor to check, give us a clear report, and assess the cause of the maintenance issue and why it needs repair, and that generally determines if it's a landlord or tenant cost according to what the lease agreement specifies. So, Marco, are you
I must
back? I've
say,
covered question one.
yeah, so I must say you've been doing very, very well. You can't see me at the moment.
Yeah.
I had to switch off my camera, but I can see
Okay.
you're getting so used to being on the
Mm,
wireless. So I hope that you can hear me properly. So let me quickly get into some of the questions that I wanted to ask you. So can you break
okay.
down the common additional costs that tenants might encounter, such as utilities, and how they can plan for these expenses effectively?
Okay. So yes, your sound is a lot better now. It does help with the picture off, although I would like to see you. But there you've disappeared again. So let me just continue. So costs again is important to determine at the time you are doing the viewing of the property, and when you make the application to rent the property, make sure that you've checked all additional costs other than the basic rental with your agent or with the landlord if it's a private let, right? So make sure that you're identifying these costs at viewing stage already. And if you're interested when you're making the application, and then make sure additional costs are specified in your lease agreement. Additional costs could include things like utilities, which would be water, refuse, sewerage, electricity. Additional costs could be if the alarm system is linked to a security armed response call out. There could be additional costs such as the lease administration fee, which the agent or landlord may charge. There could also be costs such as gas, DSTV, Wi-Fi, etc. The cost would be determined on the setup of the property, whether it's a freestanding property or whether it's in a scheme. The scheme might have its own set of costs as well. So it's always important to find out when you're doing the application already what are the additional costs. And it's important to make sure that each and every additional cost is noted in the lease agreement. There might also be costs for debt collection charges. So make sure that you check what the interest amount is for overdue rent, if there are any penalty charges for early cancellation of the lease agreement, and also if there's any other charges for debt collection, such as for sending out letters of demands, for making calls, for sending SMSs, for sending out letters, etc. Now, every additional cost in plus the basic rental must be clearly specified in the lease agreement. And when there are utilities, it has to specify how the utilities are metered. So whether it's a prepaid system or whether there's a sub meter and the reading it takes monthly, or whether there's a fixed fee for the utility amount. So it's not only important that the cost is specified, but also when it comes to utilities, um, how the utilities are going to be metered and measured to make sure that that consumption charge is for you. We find that especially in properties where there are multi-dwellings on one property, it becomes very difficult to measure utilities and accurate consumption unless there is specified, you know, sub-meters that can actually measure it. So that is basically what entails when it comes down to additional cost. So Marco's battery has just died. He is experiencing load shedding and now he has no power to his battery. I'm just checking with him what we should do. All fun and games, hey. So let me just check what's next with the next question. Marcus says go on. So I'm flying solo for the next couple of minutes and to get you just through the rest of the property related questions. So that was knowing your responsibilities around utilities, making sure it is properly specified in your lease agreement, and make sure it also says how the charges will be calculated and the frequency that it will be charged. We speak about interest rates and rental agreements, which often go hand in hand. And we want to share some insights on how interest rates can affect tenants and the proactive measures that can take place to manage potential increases. Now, when we're looking at increases with a lease agreement, then often the increases that take place is on an annual basis, and often it would be a prescribed interest rate within the lease agreement. So make sure again when you're attending to the signature of the lease agreement that you are checking how often the rent is increased, at what rate it is increased. Some leases may be a bit broader with the increased amount, and they will say a maximum of 10% increase, or it may say in line with CPI, or it may say it may not have your set amount that you can budget for, but at least if you know the average range of CPI and you know the maximum is 10%, then you know that is what you could budget for with your annual increase. Costs that you need to look out for with the increase, which normally comes with the renewal of the lease agreement on the anniversary date of the lease, would, for instance, be um, most agents charge what we call a lease renewal fee. So that's the administration charge for drafting the addendum to the lease agreement to adjust the terms for the new period. And then there would be the increased rental amount, and in addition to that, what normally happens is that your deposit will also increase to align with the new rental amount. So, for instance, if you're starting a lease agreement at this stage and your lease agreement has a monthly rental of 5,000, but the deposit is equal to 2 months' rent, so your deposit is 10,000, and so now you've got rental at 5, double deposit at 10,000, right? When we get to the lease renewal stage, and for instance, the rent increases from 5,000 to 5,500, then you'll find that the deposit also needs to be topped up to equal now 2 months' rent of the new rental amount. So most likely you will get charged a top-up deposit of 1,000 rand so that your deposit stays in line with the new set rent amount that comes with the renewal and the increased rent. But again, it's important that it needs to be specified in your lease agreement. So look out for these charges. If there is not a schedule of costs attached to the lease agreement, then it should be specified in your lease agreement what these additional charges are and when they are expected to take place. If, for instance, the lease admin fee is a once off, but the consumption is a monthly fee, it also needs to indicate the frequency. Marco, is that you are there in the background?
It is I. It is I. I want to say that this lady is a rock star. What I was just trying to sort out a couple of my technical stuff. I swapped from laptop to laptop. But you are amazing, and you may as well continue with all your points, and I will just take a listen.
Okay, so I'm at the last question now. And the last question covers disputes, Marco. And if there are disputes over costs and responsibilities, what are the options available to tenants, and what should they be aware of on how they could actually source assistance with navigating any disputes? So, like I've mentioned, all the other questions, we always somehow go back to the lease agreement. What does the lease say? What does the lease expect of me? How did the lease say I should pay these costs? When did the lease say I should pay these costs, etc.? Right? So if something is not listed in the lease agreement, then it's very difficult to dispute. because it becomes he said, she said. So it's always a good idea to have these things listed in a written lease agreement. So the one option available to tenants and to landlords as well, but tenants, this segment is for you today. So there is the Rental Housing Tribunal. The Rental Housing Tribunal is a free resource. The conditions, though, when you're logging a dispute with the Rental Housing Tribunal, you shouldn't there shouldn't be a court order in existence. So if you've already got a court order for a rear rental or you've got a court order for an eviction that's in progress, then you cannot apply to the Rental Housing Tribunal. So you can apply otherwise to the Rental Housing Tribunal to handle a dispute. They normally do it in the form of a mediation. It is a free resource. However, it can often be time consuming because you can imagine the pile of files that they have on the desk at the Rental Housing Tribunal. But I do find that they're very fair and very effective. And if they do make a ruling, it is enforceable. So if you've got time and it's not an urgent, very urgent application, then I would recommend to go to the Rental Housing Tribunal. However, if it is an urgent application and it is time sensitive, then the next route would be to then to do a civil application. If the claim is within the ambits of the small claims court, the matter can go to small claims court. I think the threshold is 15,000 at the moment. Then you can apply to the small claims court for the dispute. Otherwise, if the amount carries over that, then you would need to appoint an attorney and, of course, take the matter via the attorney that
Mm.
is has the knowledge of the lease agreement and has the knowledge of rental law, because not every attorney is specialized in the field. So I do encourage that you find an attorney that is specializes in property
Mm.
and rentals per se.
You are amazing. I think you don't need me anymore. You can fly solo on this segment. But I do have a question for you. Actually, there's a few questions that came
Okay.
through, and let's take this one. And it says, "Hi, Carmen. I have a question. If you moved out of the rental and exit inspection was done, and owner was satisfied, can they still hold you responsible for a utility bill that wasn't paid? Example, the company that handled the rental didn't do the proper procedure rather with regard to payment of the utility, even though the tenant made a request constantly. Can the owner also charge you for the amount after the tenant has already moved out, and it still bothers the tenant and still bother the tenant a year later?"
A year later. Ooh. So the way it normally works is rental is paid in advance and utilities is paid in arrears, right? Remember, we normally need to wait either for the city of Cape Town or whatever municipality it's linked to for a copy of the municipal account, or if it's in a complex, we need to wait for the levy statement from the managing agent before we can actually bill this to the tenant. So, good practice would normally be that after the exit inspection, before releasing the full deposit to the tenant, that the agent withholds a certain portion for the municipal account that still needs to come in. Now, if the agent did not do that and paid the full deposit back to the tenant, the question to the tenant is, were you responsible for payment during that period? If
Sure.
you were responsible for payment during that period, and while the agent may have failed in their duties, if you were responsible for utilities during that period, then you should pay it.
Sure. And I'm glad that we could clear up quite a few things, and you were totally amazing without me today. But we need to give people also some details. And to those watching on Facebook and YouTube, I already have the details on there. But seeing that you train so well, Carmen, you got to give your details.
Okay, so my number is 079 495 7358. I repeat 079 495 7358. And on email, you can reach me at Carmen at mirakipropertysolutions.co.za, and that is Carmen at mirakipropertysolutions.co.za, and Meraki is spelled Meraki. And then just also listeners, if you are available tomorrow and you're in the area, Meraki is a vendor at the BBC Masterclass tomorrow at the CHS Life Center, which is also in collaboration with CCFM. So if you are there, pop around to the table, come and say hi, introduce yourself, and let's get to know each other.
I like that. And hopefully, the next time we see each other is in person. I think we've done enough of this virtual stuff now.
Yes.
But you have absolutely been amazing today. And people must go check you out tomorrow. That's tomorrow at the breakfast or the business breakfast club, the masterclass. In
Mhm.
conjunction with CCFM is going to be amazing. And then also, I
Absolutely.
don't know if we can let the cat out of the bag a little bit common about next year. And people, I think they've enjoyed you so much already. I hear there's some
Mhm.
things in the pipeline. Maybe an in person
Yes.
visit.
So I'm actually meeting Mr. Weasley a bit later. So we can't share anything yet. Let me first have a chat there with Mr. Weasley, and then we can share next week. I'm sure we can share something next week.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be exciting because people get to meet you, and I always love it. And we often speak off air, and we will talk about. It's just good to have that
Mm,
face-to-face encounter with the listeners, and so.
mm.
And I know they're going to enjoy you. But with that, we're going to end off for today.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure chatting to you, and well done on flying solo today. And till next
Thank
time, God
you.
bless you.
Okay,
So that
awesome.
was
Goodbye.
Carmen Hamildin of Meraki Property Solutions. With that, I'm going to go to a break. In fact, before I go to a break, I'm going to